A man named Terry Richmond was cycling towards the court building when he was suddenly hit by a police car. The two policemen coming from the car were Officer Marston and Steve. They suspected Terry of being a criminal, and even though Terry denied the accusation, these two didn't want to listen and instead handcuffed him and searched his belongings. They found a large amount of money wrapped in a plastic bag and suspected that it was the result of a drug transaction. Terry explained that the money was legal and would be used to bail his cousin who was about to be transferred to another prison. However, the two policemen still confiscated the money and told him to prove that the money was legal if he wanted it back. Terry was forced to continue his journey to the court building with a confiscation letter from the police. At the court, he met an officer named Elliot. He explained that the police had confiscated the money to bail his cousin for no apparent reason, but Elliot couldn't do anything about it, and because his working hours were over, he left Terry, who was confused. Luckily, there was an officer named Summer who was willing to listen to his complaints. She explained that the money was considered civil asset confiscation, so it would be difficult for him to get it back, especially since there were many cases where the confiscated money became the property of the police because the owner was deemed unable to prove its legality. All she could was monitor Terry's cousin's condition. Terry must look for new funds to bail out his cousin. It was revealed that she wanted to help because she had been in the same position as him before. After returning from the court, Terry borrowed money from a Chinese businessman named Mr. Liu. He was a restaurant owner who also became a donor for him. After getting a loan from Mr. Liu, he chose to spend the night in the forest because he didn't have the money to stay at a hotel. From the forest, he checked the location of Shelby Springs Police Department where the corrupt policeman who had taken his money worked. The next morning, Terry decided to go to the police station and reported to an officer named Jessica. Jessica, who was shocked by the report, went straight to Steve. Hearing this, Steve accused Terry of making a false report and told him to leave. The police chief, Chief Sandy, came to calm the situation. He turned out to be the mastermind behind all this. He explained that Terry was the guilty one because he had run away from the police, which made everyone suspicious of him, even though Terry never ran away from anyone. Didn't want the matter to take a long time. Terry made an offer to allow the police to take most of the money as long as he was allowed to take $10,000 to bail out his cousin. Apart from that, he also gave information regarding the process that his cousin was going through. Hearing this, Chief Sandy accepted his offer. After the chief agreed to his offer, the very next day, Terry returned there. However, instead of meeting with his younger brother, Chief Sandy deliberately played a trick on him, saying that his cousin had been transferred somewhere by the court. Annoyed, Terry went on his bicycle to catch the bus through the forest as a shortcut. He was able to catch up with his cousin and promised that he would soon release him. Unfortunately, when he went to Mr. Liu to get the money, it turned out that the police had searched Mr. Liu's place because his location was tracked by Chief Sandy, so Terry ended up having no money at all to bail his cousin. Terry desperately returned to meet Summer, but unfortunately, even though he had explained his situation, that he was being played with by the police, Summer still couldn't help much. She then said that Terry's cousin's detaining didn't make sense because he had only committed a minor crime. Apart from that, she was very suspicious that this was a scandal that had been planned by the people, and the only thing she could do was provide the documents while Terry had to hand over the money to these corrupt policemen. Meanwhile, the corrupt officers were checking Terry's background. Unexpectedly, they found out that he was a former Marine trainer who was quite well respected in the US military, even though there was no information at all that he had been deployed to the battlefield. Not long after, Terry went to the police station. Knowing that Terry had never directly participated in a battlefield, Steve and Chief Sandy were brave enough to face Terry. Chief Sandy bravely approached Terry and explained that he was offended by Terry's actions in offering a bribe by sharing the money he had confiscated, because according to him, he had been humiliated in front of his subordinates. He had made up his mind that he would never help Terry in freeing his cousin, especially after finding out that even though Terry was in the army, he had never been on the battlefield at all. Terry was furious and suddenly attacked him.
Okay, real quick, we're gonna stay.
He then walked into the police station while holding him hostage. Inside the police station, Terry immediately ordered Jessica to handcuff Chief Sandy and open the storage room, which turned out to contain various military weapons and all other confiscated items. After taking some of the money he needed to bail his cousin, he asked Jessica to pretend to handcuff him and take him to the car so that the other officers who were still on guard outside wouldn't shoot him. Jessica showed a little sympathy for Terry and took him away from the police department to let him continue his journey. Terry continued his journey on his bicycle to the court, and when he arrived, he met Summer and gave her the bail money. While he was waiting for his cousin's bail letter, the police arrived at the court and surrounded him. Cornered, like it or not, he could only surrender. Terry woke up in a rundown warehouse under medical supervision and a policeman. After confirming that Terry was fine, he was taken by Chief Sandy to a hospital because his cousin was there. Chief Sandy explained that all the items Terry had seen in the warehouse were confiscated items that legally belonged to the police, and the items would be used by the police for personal gain because the government had cut their budget. Arriving at the hospital, Chief Sandy returned all of Terry's money and intended to let him go. After that, Chief Sandy explained that Terry's cousin had just been attacked by another prisoner and ended up having to be hospitalized. He offered peace because he didn't want to deal with former Marines. He would allow Terry to lead the city with all his money. He would even give him a car so he could leave more quickly. Hearing that, Terry agreed with the offer and immediately met his cousin in the intensive care unit. Unfortunately, according to the doctor, his cousin was in critical condition and the chance of survival was slim, so he was given the last chance to meet his cousin before he breathed his last. He couldn't help but cry because his cousin was a very important person and the only person who always cared about him. After meeting his cousin, Terry was picked up by Summer, who took him away from there. During the journey, the police were still watching him. In the car, Summer explained that she suspected that the police had plotted something behind his cousin's detention and he should reveal the scandal, but Terry, who had lost his cousin, decided not to deal with it anymore because everything was too late and the best option was to accept the offer of peace. After leaving the city, Terry and Summer went on their own way. Terry then went to the car salesman to pick up the car that Chief Sandy had given him. In the middle of the night, Summer woke up from her sleep and was shocked to find an intruder who had secretly injected drugs, causing her body to immediately weaken. She immediately called Terry to ask for help, and Terry immediately went to her house. After frantically searching the entire house, he found Summer still safe. When he suggested that she go to the hospital, she refused because it turned out that she was being monitored. She had a history of being a drug addict, and if she was found using drugs again, then she wouldn't be able to get her child's custody that she was fighting for, especially since her ex-husband was more established and able to take care of the child. She then told Terry about her past when she was divorced by her husband, who took her child unilaterally with accusations that she was an irresponsible mother. Hearing this, Terry offered to help, even though in the end, Summer still refused and thanked him for listening to her story. Summer went back to work as usual the very next day. However, before going to work, she was required to have a urine test to ensure that she was free from drugs, and even though she had begged and negotiated, she was forced to do it and accepted her fate, which was certain to fail to get her child's custody. It was confirmed that her urine was contaminated with drugs. Meanwhile, Terry was about to leave town when he met Steve, who stopped him. Even though Terry argued that he had come back to town because he intended to save Summer, but Steve said that he had made a big mistake because he returned to the city even though Chief Sandy had given him the opportunity to leave. Feeling like he had a chance because Terry was alone and there was no evidence of defense, Steve dared to attack, causing a gunshot wound for Terry. Terry was forced to leave his car under the bridge and start walking while calling Summer. When connected, Summer had just learned the fact that Elliot and most of the employees in the court had conspired with the corrupt police. Finally, she decided to meet Terry. Shortly after, Summer arrived at the Chinese restaurant owned by Mr. Liu. She was invited by one of the staff to the back where Terry was being treated. After being treated, Terry asked for an explanation from Summer as to why the police didn't deploy troops to arrest him. Summer suspected that the police were deliberately hiding this case so that it wouldn't get heard by the government so they could continue to do their dirty work, including scamming people and taking their money, as was done with Terry. Hearing Summer's explanation, Terry thought that the only evidence they had was recordings in the court. He had made up his mind to fight the police, especially after the death of his cousin made him no longer have any fear. They rushed to meet Elliot. Elliot couldn't answer Summer's question regarding his involvement with the police and asked Summer and Terry to stop all this. Before deciding to leave, Summer told him about her family condition and if that happened to him, and that changed Elliot's mind. He suddenly gave clues about evidence that could lead to the police being charged with corruption and other crimes. Without wasting more time, Terry went straight to the house of the prosecutor who kept the evidence. When questioned, the prosecutor admitted that he wanted to protect Summer and regretted Terry's cousin's death. He then explained that there had been a case where a bishop fought against the police but died in unnatural circumstances. At that time, the economic conditions in Shelby Springs were very worrying, which had an impact on the finances of the police department. Moreover, they were also incompetent, making them not appropriate to be given a large budget, so this was what caused the police to make money illegally. All crime cases that occur in the city would be manipulated by the police so that they wouldn't get out of the city to avoid leaks to the government. Summer then realized that the only recorded evidence was the CCTV footage in court. When they finished interrogating the prosecutor, it turned out that the prosecutor had taken medicine and tried to end his life. They immediately called the police to prevent his death, and after that, immediately left. Summer decided to join Terry's journey to get justice and went to the rundown warehouse under the court building. When they were investigating the warehouse, the police started a fire to burn the place. After extinguishing the fire, they both started looking for the hard disk which held evidence of the police's crimes. Even though the hard disk they were looking for was damaged, they luckily found an SD card that stored CCTV footage of the incident, which contained evidence of Terry's cousin's very suspicious death. They immediately left and set the fire back so that no one would get suspicious. Before they managed to get out, Summer suddenly remembered that she had to get the results of her urine test before her child's custody was revoked, but unfortunately, when she got there, she was caught by the police. As a result, she was arrested and dragged into a car. Terry, who saw her, anxiously followed the car. He then hit a car belonging to a police officer named McGill, and then paralyzing him. He then interrogated McGill about Summer's whereabouts. Afraid that Terry would do something to him, McGill contacted another police officer. Terry immediately took over the conversation and started negotiating, where he would give the SD card as long as the police were willing to release Summer. Hearing that, the police told him to carry out a swap in a place called Rebel Ridge. The next morning, the police were waiting in front of Rebel Ridge with full weapons with Summer in the backseat of one of the police cars there. A police car appeared shortly after, which was thought to be driven by Terry. Meanwhile, Terry called Chief Sandy, who was at the office with Jessica, and explained that he hadn't killed people for a long time since leaving the military. But this time, he had made up his mind to eradicate all the corrupt police, including him, so he told him to get ready. When Marston approached the police's mysterious car, he found McGill with his mouth taped shut. He then asked the other officers to go to the police station because Terry might be there. On the other hand, Terry hit the gas on his car to break through the wall of the police station and shot Chief Sandy. Jessica tried to control the situation, but Terry easily took control of her. He then asked Jessica, who turned out to be Summer's friend, to help Summer, who was in the police car. Apart from that, he also left the SD card with her. He then threatened to burn all the confiscated money if Chief Sandy didn't immediately release Summer. He then took all the weapons in the warehouse to prepare himself to fight the police who had surrounded the building. Unfortunately, Jessica sided with the corrupt police. She then pointed a gun at Terry and told him to surrender. Steve immediately destroyed the SD card that was handed over by Jessica and then explained that Summer's situation was very bad because they had injected drugs in very excessive doses. Steve was ready to shoot Terry dead, but then Marston stopped him and instead held Steve at gunpoint because this was not in their plan. Not long after, Chief Sandy appeared and suddenly shot Marston's leg. When Chief Sandy tried to calm the situation, Jessica gave Terry a chance to escape.
Chief!
Terry immediately ran to get his weapons and a shootout ensued. Marston, who had sided with Terry, explained that they could save Summer with the medical equipment in the car's dashboard. Then he turned on the camera installed in the car so that it could be recorded as evidence to trap the corrupt police. After that, Terry started attacking the police. Terry managed to save Summer and recorded Chief Sandy, who was about to shoot at him. He then took the car back to Marston to ask how to cure Summer. He then asked Marston to leave with him. Chief Sandy immediately ordered all the officers to chase him before the recording was spread. Unfortunately, the tire of the car used by Terry had been shot so the police could follow him. They decided to break through the barricade that blocked them. Jessica appeared to help, and thanks to her help, they managed to get to the hospital to save Summer, who was already critical. He then opened the trunk of the car, which contained recordings of evidence of Chief Sandy.